looking at their sample spreadsheet, and it makes no sense.
Hey, Alex, are you ready? Because we're 2 minutes behind, and I noticed.
Are we
All
good?
Right. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hit it. And welcome back to Miniature Dragon Comic Review, coming to you live from Seattle, Washington, where all of us once again got together and are sitting in our own rooms, but together on the internet, and that's all that matters. As always, I'm host for the evening, Daniel Doc Gentry, and with me are Alex and Woody, our comic gurus from Miniature Dragon Comics. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, we're back from Puyallup.
We're back from all over the place.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
So I missed episode 60. You guys did that together, and then we did SummerCon.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Was that last? That wasn't last weekend.
Yeah, it was last weekend. Yeah.
Everything's a blur. I've been cranking out wands now like crazy.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I have not been cranking out wands.
Yes, we all know what you mean by cranking out wands.
It could be a double entendre, yo.
Yeah.
Though I gotta say, Doc, for doing a soft open and just bringing initially on Saturday, you brought 5 wands. It was so cool seeing like 3 of them sell within that first day, and that wasn't even like your full repertoire that you had.
Yeah, and then I brought it out. I'm really interested to see what happens. I'm paid for in Jet City. I should be near you guys,
cool.
So when we do booth numbers, they should look similar-ish. The interesting thing is that's going to be the real telltale sign about selling wands, obviously. I mean, it was a soft opening, or cold opening is what I was calling it, because I didn't even plan to be there. That was, one of those things, you guys let me have some space, and I was like, hell yeah, I could use that.
Yeah.
And then, it sold, but I was telling the story. Now, once everything's laid out, I think it'll give me a better understanding of what happens. I did get some good feedback. I got a lot of good feedback.
Oh, good. So people did actually start engaging with you?
Oh, yeah, I got a lot of feedback. I got the typical feedback, like put leather on it, put gems on it, put metal on it. And obviously, I'm trying to stay true to the woodcraft of it all.
Sure.
But I got some really good feedback. So you'll see there'll be a little different wands, actually, in my repertoire, including natural wands with no poly, just oil-based stain on it.
Oh.
So that was, somebody said they wanted to feel the textile of the wood, and it would probably be better for them. So I'm going to have a little bit of everything. It's not like I'm not going to finish my wands and put poly on them, but there will be a few there that aren't. I'm trying different techniques now, and of course, trying to get back up to stock. But that's not what we're here for.
I would think that like wands, like say the one inspired by Willow, you'd probably want to have more of those. Like, that would be one that people would probably want.
Yeah. The sales didn't tell me anything. Out of the 5, I sold 2 of the natural ones, or the ones that I made look more like they came from nature, and I sold one of my exquisite, and then 2 of my gentry. So the sales themselves don't tell me anything. The feedback though that I got was good. So that's what I was looking for. I just wanted to tell my story and get the word out. I actually did not plan to sell, let alone if I would have just stayed with 5, that would have sold out stock, and I wouldn't have anything to show. That's what I said.
Yeah. Well, shoot, we should probably review some books, huh?
We should. Hey, so we're doing Green Valley today. We're only doing 1 through 5.
Yes.
This is going to be another series. There'll be a part 2. So this is going to be a part 1, or whatever you want to call it, for everybody out there who's interested. And Woody, why don't you give us a little bit of history of this one?
Yeah, well, this is a 9-part comic book series. Reason why we're breaking it up like that, and it was created by Max Landis, who's a screenwriter. He's known for doing the movie Chronicle, and also did Bright, that movie on Netflix.
Okay. He did have a familiar kind of feel.
Yeah, he's very talented. I've followed his act, like he's. I have really enjoyed his movies, and I like him as a writer. He's one of those guys that also doesn't know how to shut up and annoys a lot of people. And so that got him in some trouble. And so I hope his career bounces back. I I have no idea if he's even guilty of what he was accused of. It doesn't really matter for the context of what we're doing here. He basically took his was able to parlay his film career into doing two comic series that I'm aware of, which was Green Valley, and then he did a Superman comic, which was very highly rated. And I haven't read it. We'll probably review that one coming up at some point. But and then after his, whatever happened with him, it ended. The thing he's most famous for, actually, in the comic book industry, is the guy who did that rant about the death of Superman and how Superman killed death in comics, which is really interesting, and I highly recommend checking it out. But yeah, check it out. It's pretty neat. Green Valley is a fantasy story that basically focuses on a group of knights who are basically fun characters who have, they're on the top of their game and then just absolutely lose everything and are crushed. And then a boy shows up a year later after the death of their kingdom and says, "Hey, I need your help. Come help me save my kingdom." And there's an evil wizard and dragons and all these things that they don't think actually exist. And they show up anyways, and boy, do they get into some trouble. I don't want to reveal necessarily what happens. We'll probably talk about a bit more in more detail on the spoilers in the next episode, but they run into some. They do find their dragons and they find their wizard, and it's not what you think it's going to be. And when I first read this story, it's one of those ones where I really once it got going, I'm like, oh my god, I'm in. And it's one of those books that I definitely wanted to review on the channel at some point. It was definitely on the list. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's not perfect. It's not without criticism. There are obviously little things here and there, but it's as far as like just the quality of the story, I just found it completely enjoyable, and it basically has everything you expect to find in a well-constructed tale.
So, Alex, why don't you start us off?
So, as the Matrix goes, as typography, as fonts go, and as just lettering in general, I didn't see anything that was like blaringly mistakes and whatnot. Though I'm not the eye catcher for that part. But nothing where it's like to the point where it really agitated me, or like some of the other books. But as story goes, I thought this was really engaging. I thought this was really nicely done. It had a nice setup for the first issue of like getting to know the characters, and I think that's always a good aspect of getting into it. Of like, they have history, they have things that happen to them, and here's a slice of what's going on currently within the characters to get to know them without really jumping into some unique or weird stuff. To some regard, it kind of reminded me like the first episode going into the others, kind of like an abridged version of like Game of Thrones, where it's a fantasy world. There are dragons, there's myth, there's creatures, there's things out there to a certain extent, but you don't see it right away. Yes, there's minotaurs and whatnot, and or no, wait, that's not a minotaur, that's a demon.
Yeah.
But anyways, I mean, as story-wise, it it gives you an idea of who is who. It gives you an idea of what the characters are about, without going into, hey, this is the full detail, this is the full lexicon of like what's behind the scenes, but just enough to get you like, oh, okay, this is what this character's motivation, this is what they're into. And just seeing them kind of grow from there is the interesting part of the story. The level of loss, the level of motivation is a very enjoyable part to this. As art goes, I liked it. It's got a kind of a Conan the Barbarian kind of feel to it, like that. Style-wise, it fits in. Like, I could see the way that it's illustrated, being like Conan or various other fantasy. It's not very cartoony, but it has a little stylized on the way that the characters are done, so it's not complete realism, but I felt it was pretty enjoyable. How about you, Doc?
Well, all I gotta say is my hat looks small.
Oh, that's a joke from the book.
There you go. It's a good story. I agree with that part of it. It just seems like 1 through 5. I did it all in one sitting. I really felt the story did ups and downs. Like it kept me going, and then it like dropped me off for a little bit, and then it got me going. And I understand that they felt they needed to get stuff in there, but it was hard to hold on to the story as a whole at first. As it got going, it got interesting, and I think it was just the setup to introduce a new comic with new characters, new ideas. Like you said, these knights, they're not just well known. They usually just their name intimidates people. In fact, one of my favorite lines at the very beginning of book 1 is, "No, those knights are a myth. You can't be them." Yeah. And it was that level of expectation. I'm still confused on how it got where it was, because there's a gap that happens there.
Yeah.
But the storyline is fun. It was talking about wizards and dragons. I love all manner of tabletop, so I was like, cool, this is going to be cool. And then you saw the wizard and you saw the dragons, and you were like, oh, I got a gist of what's going on, and that's not right, but we'll run with it because it's very unique. It's awesome because it's unique.
Yeah.
The art, I agree with you, Alex. The art isn't anything spectacular, but the art is definitely, you get the realistic feel. Like the facial expressions were one of my favorite things in this comic book. They paid really close attention to facial features when things were being said. I found that very interesting. I'm interested to see what goes forward. With the comic itself. I was really like into this. I was like, all right, Woody likes this, so this is gonna be big hit or big. And so I started reading it. Well, it's true. Woody and I have different styles that we think is good.
Yeah.
And I started reading the comic, and I was like, okay, it's good. It hasn't drawn me in. And then like by comic 3, before the story really starts unfolding, I was like, why is Woody into this? I have no idea. I would not have thought you would have kept reading at that point.
Well,
and then the story unfolds, and I was like, oh, I see, I get it now. Like I get where this was, and like I said, it's a little ups and downs, emotional. I like that the cliche of things happening aren't what you think happens, and then there's other cliches that follow the storyline. So it's definitely not written by like a storyline chart, you know what I mean? By this has to happen for this to happen for this to happen. And I will tell you, they're dealing with real issues in this comic as well, which I found to be really interesting. That it was, loneliness, depression, needing or meaningfulness, stuff like that is actually, it's covered really well in these 5 comics too. The story was fun. Again, I didn't see anything with the lettering, but I really wasn't paying attention to that. I did this all in one sitting, so I obviously wasn't taking my time. And one of you guys likes to not have the viewer thing on that switches the panels, because I always have to turn that back.
That would be me.
But yeah, I mean, all in all, it really did cover each section of it really well. And like I said, if you start picking this up and you start reading it, and in book 3 you feel like the stories kind of took a dive and you're ready to give up, I encourage you, keep going. Read 4, it picks right back up. It's just a little slump in something that I think needs to be said in the story. It's a little weird, but the story gets fun. And like I said, it deals with the real issues in a way that doesn't feel like real issues being dealt with. So I like that too. What do you think, Woody?
Well, to address what you were saying, like I actually had a similar experience. I mean, I love this book, but when I found the book, I found it at this little shop I sometimes go to in Portland, and I picked up the first issue right after it came out. I'd heard about it, and it had an odd cover design that was unusual. So that's kind of what sucked me in, was that like it's kind of like Black Science, how it has an unusual style for how the covers are laid out, and it the first issue didn't even suck me in at all, actually, and it was partially the fact that they were running previews of the book in other comics, so I'd seen the first 5 pages, and it's like it's just a regular generic fantasy adventure. And then I'd read the first 3, and kind of like you, it didn't really get me to keep going. And then Max Landis was appearing on Screen Junkies on their debate show, and he was there to promote the book. And it's interesting. This is actually his first comic book, so it kind of reads a little bit like your first comic. It's like clearly well made, but there's some pacing issues, because it's the first time he's ever done it in this format. But like he said, keep going because there's a point where you really see what's going on. I'm like, what's he talking about? And that's actually what got me to go back and read. And then I'm like, okay, I get it now, because this is one of those books that reads best if you read the whole thing in one sitting. It's because some books read better in trade and some books read better issue to issue, and this is one of those books that reads better if you basically plow through the whole thing. Because if you do it that way, you'll be like, just keep going, and if you just read the first issue, you might put it down when you're done and not pick it back up. And it's one of those stories that it has a huge payoff at the end. And kind of getting back to your thing is like one thing I really enjoyed about it was the kind of like the naturalness of the characters and how they communicated like real people, and the way like information about them and their history and how they were set up as people that aren't just now they're here. It's like, no, they've always been there. And I felt like it was very natural how some of that was put together, and it felt like kind of almost like the real conversations people would have. And it's interesting looking at the first issue how they're kind of getting into they're almost arrogant about their confidence. Like they are so confident in their abilities and their reputation that they think they can just chase off the barbarians and they'll stay gone. And they do not take these guys seriously. And sometimes you should. So that was really interesting. But as far as the lettering goes, I guess you guys are commenting on that because I will. It works, but I didn't really feel like they picked the top form letterer for this. Like there are it works fine, but it's a little sloppy. Like there's like the way the balloons are set up, and like just frequently the words are like all the way up against the edge, like you're not like just little things you're not supposed to do, but it's consistent and it doesn't necessarily interfere with the story. And I actually like some of the graphic design elements of it. Like there were elements of like the way he handled like sound effects and just certain technical points I thought were really excellently well done. It's just as a letterer, I think that possibly with your first book, he's probably funding it himself. He's doing this on a budget and just pick the guy he could afford, and that's often how it is in these things.
My follow-up to the point that you just made, would it have been better if they would have done it the way you think it should be done?
I think so. I mean, it's not just like the way I think it should be done. It's like there's like consistency issues in the way the lettering is handled, and it's like it's the quality is all over the board. Like the guy that did this didn't set up something and stick to it. He did lots and lots of different things, and there's like a point where like the lettering, you should have a certain amount of space between the edge of the balloon and the lettering, and he just has no consistency at all. And there's it kind of looks like he doesn't actually know how to manipulate some of the control points properly. So, but I mean, it's like it's fine. I mean, it's clearly done by somebody that's done it before, but not maybe as the proficiency he should have. But I mean, it doesn't. That's the thing is like one of the things like once you're reading the story, if you're the rating on whether or not it's good is whether or not it interferes with your enjoyment of the story and whether or not you notice. And for me, obviously I noticed, but it didn't interfere with my enjoyment of the story, because once you get past that point, you actually sucked into it because it's a well-written story. You stop noticing, and you're just along for the ride.
You hear that, Marvel and DC? You hear that? Woody says, "Get your lettering right, guys."
Well, Marvel and DC usually do, but this is an indie book. It's it's by Image, and it's like Marvel has all the top people, so.
We have, what I realized when it comes to lettering, we have actually found more critical mistakes in the big guys than we have in the indie guys.
Yeah, well, Yeah, this is probably like a mid-range guy, but one thing about this though I find interesting is like I didn't notice any spelling errors. There were no grammatical mistakes. Like, I mean, well, Max Landis, there shouldn't be any from him, but it's like some of the common mistakes that like none of it was there. That was another thing too. It's like, yeah, there may be some technical points in the application of the lettering, just in the assembly of the balloons, but like it's the things that might pull you out of the story where there's a spelling error or something's like grammatically wrong. It's like these little things like that weren't present. It's just it's a well constructed book.
Get your shit together, Image.
Yeah. But anyways,
final thoughts, Alex.
So as final thoughts go, this was quite a enjoyable book. It takes part of the genre of fantasy, and I wouldn't say completely spins it on its own head, but gives a different aspect to the fantasy story. As a collector of art, I would definitely say this is very enjoyable, but my thing is it's definitely a book of would be great for storytellers. Somebody that wants to give not exactly like an Emma Shyamala, kind of twist, but there is a twist in there. This might be a good book to pick up, maybe do for a campaign or such. Or just for the fact that you enjoy, fantasy-esque kind of inspired stories.
This would be a really fun campaign to run, though I think that the GM might have to take a see. It's actually a funny thing you put it that way, because like player characters in this exact situation would end it in one night. Like the actual story of this probably would run four sessions by the end, and I don't think there is any player group in the world that wouldn't wrap this all up in one night.
Just because you've dealt with a majority of murder hobos doesn't mean that everybody is.
Also, it's a matter of getting people together. But I just wanted to say, Alex, thank you, because M. Night Shyamalan, get your shit together. Because Alex, I don't know why I'm into that today. What'd you think? Final thoughts, buddy?
I really like this book. It's one of those books that you do need to read it in one sitting. It's as you said, like there's a couple dips at the beginning. Was clearly his first first graphic novel, but it definitely reads well in trade. And I if you read from beginning to end, this is a hell of a ride. I've really enjoyed this book, and it's definitely like. I'd say there's a master class here in how to assemble good characters, and like they react like real people. I think the 1 year jump might be a little odd, because like I don't know why they would put up with that bullshit for 1 year, but like it is one of those things where these guys like they are facing difficult situations, and they're reacting the way real people would react in those situations, which is part of the reason why this wouldn't work as a role-playing game, because role players would not react like real people. But no, it's man, I really enjoy this story a lot.
You hear that, Lucas? Get your shit together. Overall, this is a great. It's a good book. It's a really good book because it's a different story told with the same old things into a new thing. And I love that you just assume these knights because you hear their title a couple of times and you're like, oh yeah, duh, those are the knights. Everybody knows the knights. And we really don't know anything about them. The only thing I got out about those knights is they are sworn that they would only move together if they all agreed to move together. So they would stay still until they agreed on something.
Yeah.
And it's really the only thing that they introduced in the book. I thought that was really unique. Art, it doesn't stand out, it doesn't pop, but if you really enjoy comic books where facial expressions and the little details are important, this is a really good book to pick up for that. Not necessarily your, oh my God, you got to check out this art kind of collectors, but more the guys that are collecting for the realism. This I thought was really well done. You don't see it very often in comic books. I mean, usually when you do, Woody tells me he doesn't like the backgrounds. For everything else in this book, though, so far it's really worth it. I haven't got to 9. We'll see. In 5 to 9, I could be like Woody. I'll go back to my normal. Woody's an idiot. But right now, I agree with Woody.
Oh, thank you, Doc.
Hey, man.
He's there for you.
We don't have a lot of time left, but I know that I wanted to ask you, Woody, are you coming to Kent Cornucopia with us, or is it just Alex and I?
I believe I'm going to be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was confused on some of the details when speaking with people.
Yeah. I mean, if anything's possible. Do we remember what day it is?
Yeah, July 12th to the 14th.
Sorry, what was that?
July 12th to the 14th.
Right. I think that I would not be able to be there on Friday, but I can be there on Saturday and Sunday.
But also, I do want to say something. I do want to do a shout out to Susan. She was gracious enough to give us a booth in front of her business. So Kent does an event, Kent Cornucopia, and we got lucky enough to be in front of her business.
Mm-hmm. Though it's going to be a different kind of deal because we will have to take down all the artwork every night because it'll be ruined by morning if we leave it. So I guess we finally have to get a step stool.
No. It becomes vintage, Washington State.
Oh, yes, of course.
Moldy, just like the state flower.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to be a woodworker, so don't put anything there you don't want wood chips.
Right. So, yeah. It should be cool.
So yeah, that's the 12th to the 14th. It starts at 10 o'clock each day. I think Friday it stops at 6, Saturday it stops at 8, and Sunday it stops at 6 or 5. I keep being told don't wait until last minute on Saturday. Apparently a lot of guys close up shop early on Saturdays around 6. So if you were planning to come out and you're like, oh, I'll just go spend an hour down there at 7, you're not going to have much there.
Well, I won't be leaving early.
Like I said, there won't be much there.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We've had some of our best sales in the last 60 seconds of a show. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been there with you.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I got nothing else. You guys got something you want to push?
Well, we were just go check out miniaturedragon.com. We are continuing with the development of the RPG content for Cyber Symbiosis. I just posted Cyberspace finally. We finally got that done. That was a project. And and we also last weekend we posted the first new page for Chapter 5, which is awesome, and we'll be doing the next one coming up this week, along with some other fun stuff. So check out miniaturedragon.com for more new comics.
I got nothing new. It's at the same old stuff I always say. So I'm not.
Yeah, bye, Doc Swan.
Well, anyways, read more comics. Keep it nerdy and live your dreams.
All right.
What do you mean, all right? It's